Welcome to Spectral Shadows. This is the place where the stories don't just haunt your mind, they follow you into the dark. Before the whispers begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it? Midnight? Or closer to the hour when shadows move on their own? If you're brave enough to continue, prove it. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows and leave a comment with your time and location, so we'll know exactly where to find you. Now, let's open the door to tonight's nightmare. Story number 1. I will start off by saying that I work as a nurse in a major hospital in my city. I have worked on several units, but I currently work on a unit that is designated for those who are palliative, meaning those that require end-of-life care. That being said, I have seen a lot of people who are in the final moments of their lives. When people come to the end of their life, there is generally a sequence of events that occurs. It begins as their functionality declines, sometimes slowly, sometimes more rapidly. People lose their ability to walk, care for themselves, and eventually lose their ability to eat, talk, or control their body functions. Towards the very end, they slip into a comatose state which can last hours to weeks, and then eventually their heart stops. Just before the comatose state, people often develop a delirium in which they can become confused, energetic, and sometimes hallucinate. In my experience, I have noticed a trend in people who are experiencing these end-of-life hallucinations. Commonly, my patients report seeing dead relatives. I am somewhat on the fence regarding the supernatural, and I don't necessarily believe in an afterlife. However, a non-negligible amount of people tell me that they see their deceased loved ones. Husbands see their dead wives. Children see their dead parents. Sometimes they speak, sometimes they don't. Nobody has reported to me that this hallucination bothers them or makes them uncomfortable. In fact, most often people are comforted by these visits. My own grandmother experienced a heart attack several years ago and told me that she saw her deceased sister at the end of her bed. My grandmother survived, but it was uncertain for a long time whether she would. She is adamant to this day that her sister, who died when they were children, was there to guide her to the other side. I try to be open-minded to the spirituality of others, so these reports are quite puzzling to me. I favor science in my own opinions, and I personally believe there may be a psychological explanation. For example, these people are aware that they are dying, and they are associating their own deaths with those that they have witnessed. I remember discussing this trend with another nurse, and she believed that they were angels. The second trend I have noticed is that people often see a dog in their room. Patients describe the dog in an alarmingly similar way. It is a black German shepherd with pointed ears that appears calm but attentive, watching them. Although the behavior of the dog sometimes changes, as some people say the dog is at the foot of the bed, and some say the dog stands beside me in their room. The most unsettling aspect of this hallucination is that the patients are often unnerved or even terrified of the dog. I have had patients beg me to take the dog out of their room because it scares them. Some even moved to tears. I try my best to comfort them, but often those patients will only be consoled while I am there, and will become frightened again when they are alone. This is another hallucination that other nurses have mentioned, as they too have experienced this with patients. I am pretty certain that this is just a trick of human psychology as well, but I always found it a little creepy. Story number 2. It is dark and raining outside. I am typing all this inside a car, hoping that nobody will notice me, praying that this is a safe hiding spot at least for this moment. at least until I let everything that happened off my chest. I need at least one other person to know before it is too late. To give you a backgrounder, I am a second-year medical school student at possibly my country's oldest university, definitely one of the oldest universities in Asia. I will not give any names to protect the innocent, but it goes without saying that my campus is haunted. Forget the prestige or the fact that literal national heroes studied in this university. Mention its name to anyone in the country, and they will ask if you have ever seen a ghost. I prided myself as a woman of science. I have had countless night classes and 8 p.m. dismissals. Even in pre-medical, I never saw a ghost. Not once. What I did see, however, is something worse. Something no one should ever see or have to go through. It shouldn't have to exist. Period. Even if an evil few disagree and say that it is for the greater good. So, I went on with my life, made friends and had a few boyfriends, loved some teachers and hated a few, and dreamed of becoming a successful orthopedic doctor in the near future. Although my parents wanted me to take pediatrics or obstetrics instead. Medical school was a ton of pressure and highly competitive, with fewer and fewer students returning each term. But what was new? Except for that one night class when we all entered the lecture hall to find an unfamiliar professor waiting for us on the platform. I will never forget the look on his face. Unnaturally pale and pasty, a smile as wide and forced as a clown's. Mr. Romero is undergoing investigation by the university's authorities, he explained between his teeth, still smiling. In the meantime, I will handle this class. My friends and I glanced at each other, a little unnerved, but at this point, we just wanted to get it over with and return to our dorms. In particular, I was so exhausted that I did not get to recite much that day. I was also pretty bummed because I liked Mr. Romero and his way of teaching, even if he had a tendency to question the university's archaic religious policies, or its current stances on politics, or the ongoing corruption within the administration. In lectures, Mr. Romero had the tendency to go off topic. Whenever he caught himself, he always said the same thing. Everything is connected. Then he would go back to his lecture on nerves and tissues. Still, as upset as some of us were with the substitute arrangement, we were not really surprised about it. We just hoped that Mr. Romero would not get fired. Other professors who upped too much ended up getting called by the administration. A few students were victims of this as well, and they would never show up to class or lab again, presumably expelled. And so, for the longest time, I thought I would not see Mr. Romero again. Until tonight. My friends and I were on our way back to our dorms after class, when I realized that I had left my canvas bag under the desk at the lecture hall. "You can get it tomorrow, Rafaela," my dorm mate, Olive, said. "Besides, it has been raining hard lately. You do not want to get caught in the rain." I considered for a moment. It was typhoon season, after all. We had just passed by the main building of our campus, which was just a road away from the medical building. A little lore on this building. It is really old. It has gargoyles and statues carved on the roofs and walls, and for some reason, no one knows why, its top floor is sealed off to the public. No classes are held there. All stairs leading to that floor are blocked off. Even the elevators do not have a 4 button to prevent people from going there. Just floors 1 to 3. We are not yet far off, I told my friends. I will catch up. You guys go ahead. Thunder rumbled and brought with it fine droplets of rain. I groaned. I really wanted to get my canvas bag because my umbrella was in there, and I did not want to waste my money on another umbrella that would get lost, forgotten, or stolen again in the future. Also, it was almost 9. and the janitors would be cleaning the lecture halls anytime soon. "I will follow you," Nathan said. Olive smiled knowingly, and the others began teasing him. Even though I knew Nathan had a crush on me, I saw him as nothing more than a friend. I hurried to the medical school building before he could follow, and before the rain worsened. By the time I found my canvas bag, the building was almost empty, and the lights of other classrooms in the hallway were going off one by one. The last classes were getting dismissed. The rain outside worsened as well, all of a sudden, sending torrents of downpour that I knew would flood the lower-lying levels of the campus. I groaned, realizing that I had chosen the worst pair of black flats to navigate that possible situation. But it had been sunny in the morning. "Never mind," I thought to myself, settling on my seat in the lecture hall. It was so eerie to be alone, but I did not believe in ghosts, and I knew that it would be much worse outside. Maybe I could use a bit of rest. I yawned and folded my arms on the table and slept, setting my alarm to 20 minutes. I did not know then that I was being watched, that there were footsteps from the hallway, and that the whispers I soon heard came from people who had just entered the room. For all I knew, these were just part of a dream. Then the alarm sounded, and I woke up to a dark room that smelled like rotten meat, or worse. I have handled cadavers in medical school. I thought I was used to the smell of death. But this was not just death. It smelled like something or someone was actively dying, decaying. And in the darkness all around me were cries and moans of pain. I scrambled to my feet. I tried to stay calm. I knew that I was no longer in the lecture room. For some reason, I was still holding my phone. I turned on my flashlight and saw myself in a dark hallway. One wall was made up of windows, half hidden by thick railing. I peered outside and had to blink twice. I wondered if I was still dreaming. The windows overlooked 4 stories below, to a courtyard garden, that of the main building. Then I heard rattling, 3 knocks coming from a door. A rescue? Deep voices, including the substitutes. If it works, at the very least, some part of her will be here. Another voice, a female, someone I could not recognize. And if it does not, then she will end up like Romero. Footsteps and flashlights, lines of light that fell upon walls and revealed horrors that almost made me scream out loud. But that would give me away. I hid behind an empty bookshelf, hoping to blend in the shadows as the 2 teachers inspected the room. But not before I captured evidence against them. Shielding me from view on the other side was a torso. Yes, a torso. The rest of the body blended in the wall. As the flashlights danced around the hallway, I caught more body parts. An arm jutting out of the floor, a hand swaying in painful jerking motions. Legs and feet with missing toes embedded between the wall and floor. Shapes of faces under the paint, their expressions filled with agony. Still with my phone in hand, I hid behind the half-bodies and other obstacles, a chair here and there, other bookshelves, some nearly broken tables, and followed closely behind as the 2 paced the room. Trust me, I caught everything on video. The body parts still jerking and moving, attached to the ceiling, walls, floor, the sounds of eternal torture. People forever stuck between life and death. And then, snippets of answers. My substitute professor and his colleague were apparently using the bodies of subversives and patients who had no family to miss them as test subjects for experiments on teleportation. But I cannot tell if this new arm over here is hers. It is her skin tone. Something tells me it is not her. If it is not her, we have succeeded at last. I stayed long enough until I saw what I needed to see. I used the flash in my cell phone camera, knowing fully well that I was finally blowing my cover. But that was Mr. Romero's head sticking out of the wall, offering me a small, sad smile and a word of advice that I was going to take regardless. "Run!" I dashed down the hallway. The professors, more familiar with the terrain, sprinted after me, or tried to. Some of the arms yanked their feet, and they had to struggle to break free. The man broke free first, but tripped over another leg, while another half-body jutting from the nearby wall reached out to pull his hair until he fell backwards. Meanwhile, I was getting closer and closer to the door, wondering how on earth I was getting out of the building if every entry point to the 4th floor was sealed off. Turns out I did not have to worry. I opened the door, and in the blink of an eye, I was at the lobby of my dorm. Nobody else was there. It was late, but the lights were still on, and in a moment, the security guard came out and greeted me with a smile. "It is quite late, Rafaela, but you are dry, thank God. I am glad you did not get caught in the rain." Thunder rumbled outside. The wind and rain howled. I ran up to my room, charged my phone, and checked if everything was there. Nothing but 10 minutes of blank, mute nothingness. And the picture I took of Mr. Romero. One long black rectangle that did not show anything, even when I changed its brightness in an app. I knew I could not go back to school. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them in a second, I found myself in my car, which was in the parking lot across the hospital. Their experiment on teleportation worked for the very first time, it seemed, with me. I am slowly learning to navigate this power. All I had to do was close my mind and will myself to be in a different place. I must admit that it was an amazing power to have. Something I could also use in bringing the truth to light. But at what cost? At what cost? Story number 3. I do not remember much before I got here. Just a few quick flashes of getting T-boned at an intersection, and one time when I opened my eyes in the ambulance here. When I woke up, I was instantly greeted by the ever-so-familiar stench of hospital-grade disinfectant. Once my headache disappeared, I was left sitting straight up in my hospital bed, my heart monitor going haywire. Quickly, Dr. Hansen, or at least that is what his name tag said, appeared in my doorway. "Calm down, son. You're safe now," he said in his fatherly and calm voice. "I need to ask you a few questions." He could see the dazed confusion plastered across my face, still trying to figure out what planet I was on. "Do you remember what happened?" he asked, just as soothingly as when he first entered. "Not really, no," I said, still groggy. "That's okay. Do you need anything?" "Yeah, actually, a water would be great. I'll have a nurse bring it in for you. In the meantime, get some rest." Dr. Hansen left the room. A few minutes later, I felt my hand fiddling with the TV remote. I turned it on only to get a no signal pop up on the screen. After my valiant attempt to watch some Jerry Springer, I waited a few more minutes for that water. After a good 15 minutes, I realized something. There was no noise, just quiet. No conversations taking place, no phones ringing, not even any footsteps outside the door. I finally decided to stand up and take a look around my room. Right next to my bed was a nightstand, with all of my belongings in a bag, including the phone I am writing this on. After getting out of the hospital gown and into my own clothes, I decided to take a look around the actual hospital itself. When I opened the door, I was greeted with the same silence as in the hospital room. I decided to keep walking despite every fiber of my being screaming for any semblance of normalcy or comfort. For what felt like hours, I wandered around the same repeating corridors with that shitty and nauseating aroma that is ingrained into every hospital ever built. Eventually, I got the idea to just walk down the same hallway and see where it takes me. For another 30 minutes, I followed the same corridor. It only led me back to my own hospital room. Where the fuck am I? Every hallway and corridor here leads me back to this same fucking room. There are no windows, no reception desks, and no people. What is going on here? I feel like I am going crazy here. I keep thinking I am hearing people behind me, only for there to be nothing there. There is nothing here. Does anyone know where I am, or how to get out of here? Please, I am getting desperate. I am not even sure if this will make it to anybody, but anything at this point is worth a shot. I saw your comments telling me to use the phone I am typing on to call somebody. To be honest, I hadn't thought of that. I had been so caught up in all of the commotion, I hadn't thought of trying to call people. The first person I tried was my girlfriend, Dina. I am crazy about her. Have been since the day we met. I knew she would answer her phone on the first ring if I called. It rang once, then nothing. Busy signal. The next person I tried was my dad. We were supposed to be working on his old '69 Mustang. Thing is a beast of a car. Same thing, rang once, then busy. I put my phone away. Another thing someone mentioned was to try windows. The problem with that is there are none. There were curtains in my room drawn to hide the giant slab of untreated concrete, or whatever the hell that stuff was. By this point, the feeling of hopelessness had thoroughly sunk his way into my mind. I collapsed on the fake hospital room floor in defeat. What the hell was I supposed to do? I felt like I had been ripped out of my life and placed into a bad dream. I decided to cope by crawling back into the bed I woke up in, and to sleep for the first time in. I don't know how long. There was no sun anywhere. I slept for God knows how long. The time on my phone now seemed like a monument to the past. I began to slowly come to grips with the reality that I may very well die in that hospital, or whatever it was. I woke up with a start to a screeching hiss from what sounded like a PA system. No words, just this loud and ear-piercing noise. I looked around to see a plate of hot food sitting by the door. No one around, just a plate of food. I jumped out of bed and flung the door open, looking for someone. Something. Food doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Something has to make it and bring it. I looked around and saw nothing. I was furious. Not only was I trapped in this hellhole, the people that brought me here are now teasing me. They were making me think I was losing my mind. And maybe I was, but to do that is a special kind of asshole. I became so full of anger that I, for no reason, lost everything I had ever worked for. The people I love, all gone. I picked up that plate and threw it at the blank concrete spot on the wall and let out a loud, primal scream. To my surprise, the plate left a hole in the concrete. Not a chip, but a hole. I approached it cautiously and peered through. Stairs. I looked around the room for something to help me break the rest of it down, and my eyes landed on a broken piece of plate. Without hesitation, I picked it up and began hammering it against the wall. Over and over again, I pounded on the wall, the piece of plate cutting deeper and deeper into my skin. I didn't care. I saw a shot at freedom, so I took it. Eventually, I had put such a hole into it that I was able to just crawl through. I ran up those stairs as fast as my legs allowed, only to come to another door. My hand fell onto the doorknob. I twisted it for it to open right up. The door revealed an empty room with windows all along the farthest wall that showed a forest, and in the distance was what looked to be a small town. Standing in the middle of the room was Dr. Hansen, if that was even his real name. "Sorry it took so long for your water. It just slipped my mind," he said, smiling. "Why am I here? Who are you? What is going?" I shouted before he cut me off. "I have to applaud you. You figured out what was happening long before any of the others did." "Others?" I asked in confusion. "You think you're the only one we've been watching?" he said again in that snide and condescending voice. "Come with me, and all will be explained." He offered out his hand. I grabbed it and brought my fist to the bridge of his nose as hard as I could. sending him collapsing to the floor. I got on top of him and began hitting him over and over again, one hit after another. I screamed things at him. I don't remember what. All I knew was that I was screaming. Before I knew it, we were in a puddle of blood, the same blood that dripped from my knuckles and stained my hands. I stood up and collected myself. The silence began to overwhelm me again. I looked around to see there was a door behind where Dr. Hansen had been standing. I walked over and opened it to see another set of goddamn stairs that led down to another door. I walked down, still in shock from what I had just done. The door opened to outside, the actual outdoors. For the first time in what felt like years, I smelled fresh air. The door opened to the middle of the forest, but in the distance, about 400 yards away, was a main road. I followed it until I came to the town I had seen from the window earlier. I walked into the local diner. The front sign read, Dee's Diner. Below it in smaller letters was a sentence that read, Best in all of Tennessee. I lived in Wisconsin, nowhere near Tennessee. I walked inside and sat at the counter next to a man in a button-down, jeans, boots, and the strangest part was that there was a surgical mask hanging from his ear. Rough day? A lady from behind the counter, who I presume was Dee, asked nervously, noticing the blood all over me. She was also wearing a mask. Yeah, you could say that, I said, chuckling for the first time since I had been put in this whole mess. What's with the mask? You're just pulling my leg, aren't you? She said, letting out a reserved chortle. No, ma'am, just a little confused. What are you confused about? Corona has been on the news for what feels like forever now, she said, just as confused as I was. What's Corona? Now I know you're messing with me. You know that Chinese virus that them chinks cooked up in a lab over there? Whole crock of shit if you ask me, she said, becoming more comfortable with my presence in her diner. Oh yeah, that, I said, still confused but changing the subject. Do either one of you have the date? I do, the man next to me said, finally talking for the first time since I had entered the diner. The 18th. Christmas is in a week. Okay, thank you, I said, trying to hide my terror. I left the diner in a hurry. Could it really almost have been Christmas? My crash was in February. Christmas had just happened. How long was I in a coma for? All of these questions raced through my mind. I kept walking through town until I found a motel. Joe Mega Motel, the sign read. I walked inside to the front desk and asked for a room. I must have forgotten I was still covered in blood as he gave me the same confused and scared expression as the lady in the diner. When I got to my room, I took a long and warm shower for a few reasons. One, because I was filthy and just needed one in the first place. The other being the ability to let my mind wander and come up with a solution as to what I should do next. Right now, I am writing this on a bus on my way somewhere new, where I can keep an eye on what has been going on with these people. Dr. Hansen's words still echoing through my head. You really think you're the only one we've been watching? That "we" part is what is bothering me. How deep does this rabbit hole go? No matter how much I want to, I can't stop thinking about it. So to cap this off, Dina, if this somehow makes its way to you, that's where I've been for the past 11 months or so. Goodbye. You've reached the end. But the shadows haven't left you. If this story unsettled you, prove you survived. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows, and leave a comment with the part that haunted you most. The darkness is always waiting, and so are we. Until next time, don't turn off the lights.